Thank you for using voice text. You need to contact our sales support team to obtain a valid verification file. Group reading tales of a traveling witch called Nike. She turns to her mom and goes, "Mom, I want to be a traveling witch too, because you know she's an anime product." Her mom then tells her that she's got to cover the witch part first. She starts studying really hard until she becomes the youngest person to pass the sorcery examinations. Yes, go girl. Her parents congratulate her, but she just brushes it off, saying the exam was way too easy and the other exam takers were just too weak. Oh my god, she's cocky too. Yes, finally a cocky, talented female. And I'm sorry, okay, now her next step is to get a witch to train under so she could be promoted from an apprentice witch to a fully fledged witch. Unfortunately for her, no one in her hometown really wants to take her, and even though she's the youngest person to ever pass a sorcery exam, she goes home and she overhears her parents talking about a witch that just moved in near the city. Since she doesn't really have any other choice, Elaina decides to find this witch and ask her to be her teacher. She sees her in the forest just turning around and around while being surrounded by butterflies, which is Elaina nopes out at first glance, but then remembers that this weird-ass witch is literally her only option, so she goes to ask her, expecting to be just rejected again, and to her surprise the super weird witch, who's turned out her name is Friend, takes her in. Huzzah, let's go, let's do this. Which turns out to be a massive drag, because all Friend does is make Elaina do all the chores around the house without teaching her any actual magic. Elaina gets annoyed, but she doesn't say anything until one day, and Friend says that she's challenging her to a duel. Friend doesn't hold back and just hits this kid with magic attack after a magic attack. She even told Elaina that her fame of being the youngest person to pass the sorcery exam isn't enough to have her fight back at Friend like she's this lady. Calm down, this is some 14-year-old kid that you're mercilessly beating the out of after being defeated. Elaina cries, much to Friend's shock. She tries different ways to cheer her up, like giving her a crown made of weeds. Friend then hugs Elaina, which makes her vent out all her frustrations, saying that Friend was just having fun bullying her all the time. Friend then reveals that she was bribed, politely asked by Elena's parents to take her in as her disciple, but also teach her what it means to fail at things and to not immediately get what she wants, which sounds like because didn't she have to work super hard to become a really good witch in the first place? Like damn what. Okay, she then tells her it's okay to say no if she's had enough of things, thus starts her actual training. Elaina finally gets to learn magic and does so well that she eventually beats Fran in a duel and thus concludes their training. Friend then brands Elaina a proper witch. Fran decides on Elena's witch name as the Ash, and which Elaina hesitatingly agrees, and Frank gives her a brooch with her witch name inscribed on it, Passion Witch Elaina. Elaina also finds out that her mentor is actually a well-known mage in another country that just visited her town in search of someone. When Elaina asks Friend if she's found the person she was looking for, Francis smiles before saying goodbye. She then goes home and says, "Hey Mom, Dad, I'm a witch now, can I finally ditch this place and travel?" Her parents agree, though her dad starts to cry and tells her to take care before she finally leaves and starts to travel for the next 3 years. In the next episode we find that Elaina has reached the land of mages, which she gets surprised at how lax the security is, but the guards of the gate explain that they don't need to check people because only mages can reach the country anyways. She is mesmerized by the country and starts to look for a place to stay when another witch slams into her and they both fall into one of the rooftops. The witch starts panicking, firstly because she didn't know any spells that would fix the roof, like Elaina had to tell her to apologize before she started saying sorry to her and everything. Elaina then fixes the roof with the time reversal spell and then heals the witch, who is bleeding. After that she goes back to finding a place to stay. Too bad for her, no hotel wants to let her in at all. She gets confused and tries one last hotel, and finds the witch from earlier working there. What a coincidence, no way. The witch panics because she thinks Elaina is there to get revenge for the incident earlier. She then introduces herself as Saya while Saya prepares her room. Elaina finds out that she's lost her brooch. She enlists Saya's help in finding it but fails. She also realizes that maybe that was why the other hotels were being total snobs towards her. Elaina gets disheartened and returns to the inn to take a bath. After that she finds out that Saya trespassed into a room using the "I work here" privileges to ask Elena's help. Saya then explains that she and her sister had been training to be witches. Her sister had passed the previous exam and left the land of mages, while Saya stayed working at the end because she kept on failing. She asks Elaina to train her and help her pass the exam. The exam is only a week away and Elaina agrees to teach her until she can find her brooch. Elaina explains how the sorcery exam works. It has two parts: a written exam that's way too easy and a practical exam that has the examinees ride on booms and spar against each other until one remains on their brew. She then focuses on training Saya for the second part. She starts by training her how to fly on a broom. Saya learns this surprisingly quickly, which makes Elaina very suspicious. Elaina then teaches her how to utilize wind magic, which she used herself during her own exam. After that Elaina goes back to where she and Saya crash landed in hopes of finding her brooch there. She then notices a lady living nearby looking at her and goes to ask her if she'd seen it nearby, and the lady pretends not to until Elaina gives her a coin, and whatever she tells Elaina makes her frown. That night Saya asks to sleep beside Elaina. Anyways, she starts complimenting Saya and tells her that she's taught the novice witch all she knows. Saya then says that she wants to learn more until Elaina outright yells at her to return her brooch. Yeah, it turns out that Saya had planned on hitting Elaina right at the beginning and stole her brooch also she wouldn't be lonely anymore. Elaina calls her out saying that this wasn't a good enough reason to do her dirty like that, and despite that Elaina sympathizes with her as Saya reminds her of her previous self, so she gives Saya her spare hat and continues to teach her a while more before finally leaving. 6 months later, and now in a different country, Elaina reads in a newspaper that Saya has finally passed the sorcery exams. Is this really newspaper worthy? Okay, never mind. Elaina continues on with her journey. In the next episode, she stomped by a huge flower field as she sees a woman thinking she's the caretaker of the flowers. The woman then says that she's just there because she loves them. She then gives Elaina a bunch of flowers wrapped in a pink scarf and asks her to give it to anyone so that they can spread the beauty of the flower field. Elaina receives it and flies off to the nearby country. Once she's there, she gets stopped by one of the guards who immediately takes the bouquet away from her. An oligarch arrives and tells him to back the hell off. The younger guard harshly returns the bouquet to Elaina. Before walking away, the older guard apologizes for him and explains that he just lost a younger sister a while back. He then also asks to confiscate the flowers that Elaina bought because they're banned in the country for being poisonous to non-magic users. He explains that people are drawn back to the field where the flowers bloom only to become fodder for those flowers. Elaina remembers the woman on the field before handing off the flowers to the guard who burns them in a furnace. Later that night, Elaina then recalls a story from her favorite book about a plant that's gone sentient and starts sucking in magic. She then checks on the field the next day and finds the younger guard there. He thanks her for helping him find his younger sister by showing him his sister's scarf and the flowers. Elaina sees that the sister had already turned into a flower and her brother was already turning into one. She backs off and flies away, seeing as there's nothing else that she can really do. As she leaves, more people holding the same bouquet of flowers slowly walk towards the field. While traveling, Elaina meets another magic user named Emil. Emil engages her in small talk, eventually getting to talk about how he's collecting happiness in a bottle he's holding. He explains that he's doing that for a girl he likes back home. Oh, to have a man like Emil. I'm not lonely. What do you mean? Elaina then says he reminds her of a story she read before about a husband who traveled to different places and used magic to show these places to his wife who couldn't leave their home because she was sick. Now remember this in your head, because this will be very relevant. Later Elaina then asks Emil about this girl that he likes. He says that the girl was a servant working in their house, named Nino. Emil takes her back to his village where his dad is the chief. He says that he's gonna give his gift to Nino after lunch, which then gives him the radical idea to invite Elaina to lunch. So the two of them walk to Emil's house. Together Elaina soon meets Nino and asks if she's from a land in the east, saying that Nino reminds her of someone she knew. Emil answers for her that yes, she is indeed from the east where his dad found her. Emil tells Nino that he has. This is a demo of the voice text English TTS system. A gift for her. Nino gets scared because she thinks his dad might get mad if she receives a gift. He then orders her to take it later once he gives it to her, and she agrees. They then go to the kitchen together to prepare lunch. Emil's dad soon arrives and is surprised to see a visitor in the house. He welcomes Elaina, though he's giving her the super evil eye. So lunch is soon served and they enjoy a feast. Nino starts cleaning up, and Emil helps her once the two of them go back to the kitchen again. Elaina asks the chief about Nino. He then says he actually bought Nino. Nino goes back to finish cleaning up the table, but Emil suddenly pops out and she drops the pitcher that she was holding. The village chief gets seriously mad and lashes out at Nino, who starts apologizing over and over. Elaina then stands up and says that Nino doesn't have to clean the mess. Before pointing her glowing wand at the village chief, she then points it to the shattered pieces and uses magic to assemble them again. Later on Emil gets frustrated. He wasn't the one who defended Nino, and Elaina reminds him of the gift, saying that it seemed like a perfect time to give it to Nino. Emil does so excitedly, opening the ball in front of Nino and unleashing the happiness inside. Visions of what made other people happy appeared in front of her, and Emil promises to make her happy as best he can. Nino just cries and he hugs her, and it's so cute. Oh my heart. It was time for Elaina to leave, and Emil tells her to come back soon. When Elaina flies away, she remembers the ending of the story she mentioned earlier. Yeah, remember that apparently the wife ended up so depressed by her husband's gift that she could never see for herself, so she ended up toaster bathing herself. Elaina then narrates that she never knew what happened to Nino after that, or rather, she didn't want to know. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope my stupidity made it a little easier. Thanks for sticking with me until the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.